Okay, so I think it's starting.
Yeah.
So hello, welcome back. And then I'm just going back to this.
Here we go.
There you go.
Technology, it's a wonderful thing. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello. Awesome. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
And yeah, so happy Thanksgiving to Canadian friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and yeah, so lots of people having turkeys and stuff today.
Turkeys and stuffing.
Yeah, turkeys and stuffing and pies and whatever.
And fights. Lots of fights.
So you guys,
Yeah, you can't have
family fights.
Fights.
Did you guys have turkey yourselves, or did you guys?
Not this time. We skipped turkey, but we having a pork roast.
Sometimes we have like sushi or something. So
Is it is it pretty much the same holiday, like same tradition in terms of foods and what people? It's just different date.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What's the weather like right now?
It's cool, sunny. It's nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's about, I don't know, 10.
No, about 13, I think.
13.
degrees.
So it's like
A centigrade.
45-ish.
No, that's 56.
56?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Fahrenheit.
Anyway,
so
let's start.
Yeah.
Today we're just continuing conversation we had last week was healthy decision making, and then we talked about more like in general. We want to go in a little bit deeper and maybe exercise so we can have heart-centered decision making. So that's our topic, and we'll see what kind of exercise we're gonna come up. So we have some exercise that we're gonna share throughout this event, and
each week, or sometimes,
and today too, throughout this 1 hour, and just helping us to stay centered in our heart, so we can have healthy decision.
Yeah. We want to also keep the conversation always for our audience here, not just up here, in the head. We want to keep it, cover all the different levels and make it real and usable for everyday life.
Practical.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
So so that's that. Where should we start? Being in the heart, and that helps us making a good decisions.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing is that because of the current situation and going on in the world right now, there's a fair bit of fear out there, right? Fear of the different things that could affect our lives, and a lot of insecurity, and so there's a lot of that root chakra kind of level of just the survival and things like that people are concerned with, and that's where the conversation tends to go. And it's harder to connect with connect with our own rational thought process, because when that happens, because if you're in fear, then you tend to shut down your frontal cortex and all that kind of stuff, and you tend to go right to the amygdala, which is like your reptile brain, right in the lower middle part of your brain. So it shuts a lot of your brain activity down when you're frightened, and then you tend to be thinking in terms of survival and that fight or flight and all that kind of stuff, or freeze. And if you're not necessarily thinking through the situation thoroughly, right?
Yeah, in a healthy
way. So I mean, sure, for short-term emergencies, that's what you need, but when this is a long-term thing, we're dealing with decades-long crisis in the world, going on here, and it's just got a different flavor lately with the latest health crisis. And so we need to be able to make thoughtful decisions. We need to figure out what is accurate information that's out there, what's less accurate, you might say, or incomplete, or maybe some information that has an agenda behind it, that kind of thing. We need to be able to sort through that kind of stuff, be aware, think it through, and then weigh the options. And so there's a lot more that needs to go out and communicate with other people. It's so essential, right? So how do we do that?
Yeah, so should we jump in, and then how we each of us do like a consciously staying in our heart, and then so we can make healthy decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Should we do that? Yeah. You guys want to start? What you do, what kind of thing, what you are aware, and what's the sign, and then you share those kind of things. If you can share. Yeah.
So I'll start. I think that before we dive into the conversation, I think it makes sense to take a moment and define what being in our heart means. I know it's a common term, but what does it really mean, and why does it have this kind of new agey flavor to it that I feel that somehow diminishes the power that being in that state really has, and why in our society we view compassionate communication or having the ability to hold space for a different perspective, a differing perspective, as something that's weak, right? So we have to identify really what is going on when we show up in conversation. Is our goal to be right? Is our goal to prove that our point of view is the correct one and to convince the other person that that's the best way of looking at the problem? Or is the point to truly understand one another? And so I personally think that what's going on in the world right now, like, really requires that capacity, and that needs to be the goal from my perspective. I believe that we do need to show up to the table with the container to hear another perspective, because it is exactly in this division and then this blaming that is happening that is breaking up different sectors of society. And in the process, we're not actually solving problems. We're creating big ones, really, really big ones. So I'd like to start by saying, what does it mean to be in your heart? And before we dive into that, I think it makes sense to just give a little bit of a energetic anatomy reminder, because like you said, Paul, I think that there are very physiological components to when we show up in the prefrontal cortex, and this, the way that the brain is actually, or the body is being activated. But I'd like to take a moment and really kind of review the energetic anatomy, and how I'm confident that most of the folks listening in are familiar with the chakra system. And the chakra system varies from culture to culture, but there are some universal aspects of it. So there's typically minor differences, but the Eastern one, which is the one that we're used to, does tend to be the most predominant one, and it's the one that I personally have found resonance with. And I have found in my experience that that's definitely the way it works. I don't endeavor to tell people this is the way things are, but this is the way things are in my experience. So without going too much into detail, I think that it's safe to say that anything that happens with the bottom three chakras relates to the individual. And even the second chakra, which is typically what the center in the body that gets activated when we deal with interpersonal relationships, those relationships are really person to person. So it's my relationship with my parents, my relationship with my lover. It's those dynamics and those energies that are exchanged person to person. So bottom, real quick. Again, I'm not saying anything new, but base chakra deals with all of our instinctual processes, and it's very deeply individual. This is about me. It's about my body. It's about doing the things that I need to do to take care of my needs and what I need to do to stay alive. Second chakra, like I said, it's about interpersonal relationships and sexuality, but it's really about that one-on-one. Third chakra deals with our sense of power, our sense of self. This is a very important part of the body because that's really what gets diminished when we have a lot of emotional wounding. But it's dealing with the individual. The polarity shifts once we get to the heart center. And as you guys know, the heart center is the hub of the wheel. It's the most important one. The minute we come into the heart, so what does it mean to come into any of these chakras? The current of energy is always flowing, but what changes is our awareness. So where is our awareness going, and how are we viewing that problem or that situation? So we bring awareness to that part of the body and we activate it, and we start to process information through that part of the body. So when it comes into the heart, all of a sudden that awareness now shifts from the individual to the collective. That is the most powerful place that we can be, because now we have the capacity to actually hold space for other people. And obviously, if we can bring it up even above in our expression, being in our integrity and the way that we're showing up in the world, and that means that whatever our words are, our actions are in alignment with that integrity.
That's fifth chakra you're talking now.
Exactly. The throat chakra, if we bring it up to the third eye, now we have an awareness of the collective even beyond time and space. So we might actually have glimpses into potential future events and that sort of thing. And then obviously having our awareness on the crown is the ultimate state of being, because now we're truly receiving intelligence from the divine realms, very much collective, but even transcending the body. So what interests me is the heart. So let's talk a little bit about that. Being in the heart, again, is the minimum place that we have to come to in order to truly come to the table with the ability, with the strength, with the trust to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation.
And when you say minimum, that means below that is the lower chakras, and then bringing it up, that's the minimum height up to the height of the heart. That's the minimum place to bring your awareness up to. Okay.
You got it. Yeah. I mean, if you show up to a conversation with your center of gravity up here, then you're golden. But that's a lot to ask. I'm just saying, just simply coming to the conversation with this center of the body activated.
So, like Buddha's up here, right?
Very few of us can be that.
Not everybody.
We might go have moments of that, but to sustain that level of perspective is kind of difficult for most of us.
Sure. Yeah. And it's easier to be down lower, right? Yeah.
We tend to hang out in those lower chakras. I mean, the truth is that we do, and it requires some personal work to be able to work through some of our wounding and trauma, so that energy can flow up a little bit more, and so that we can be in a place of safety and trusting and not trying to control the environment so much. So when we're dealing with the activation of the lower chakras, especially the survival ones, when we're in a fear state, it is our natural inclination to want to control the environment because we sense that our life is at stake. So there's this sense of contraction, of wanting to convince the other person that you have the right perspective, that they need to see things from your perspective. And I think that's a lot of these conversations that we see in the collective happening right now. And it's not surprising. And I'm not by any means minimizing the importance of the events that we've been going through. It's been deeply traumatic for all of us. So yes, we all have an experiencing fear from because of different things. So I think we actually have to work to process some of this fear and be able to arrive here, because when we're here, we're in a safe, we are in a place of safety. Our body is relaxed. We are allowing whatever is happening to come down into the body. And not only do we feel safe within our own being and our own life, but we have the space to hold another person's perspective with compassion. And that's the key. So
that's a big deal. You're covering a huge amount of ground there, and getting to the point of compassion is something that I think we can talk more about here. But yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Alex. And you just mentioned one word there. You said the collective. What we're hearing out there in the collective. I just wanted to touch on that. By that you mean the media, social media, those kind of things. Even conversations you have with people that you know around you can be part of that, right? So there is a lot of fear that's out there, and it's activating that. I think what you're getting at here is that it's activating our lower chakras, particularly our survival, our root chakra, and if that's activated and keeping our awareness there, I think what you're saying is we're not able to get past our own self-interest for survival, for getting ahead, that kind of thing, and get to a point where we're talking about compassion in the heart, bringing it up to there. We can't get there if our focus is in our root chakra, right? If we're just afraid all the time, just like, anxious about this, worried about that, shocked by what we see in the news, right? That kind of thing, those kind of responses, those places where we're down in our root chakra, and if we stay there, we're not able to have more of a balance and bring our awareness up to think about the concerns of other people as much, is what you're getting at.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And it's no surprise. I mean, we're dealing with matters of life and death. So yes, you better believe that our survival instincts are going to be activated.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
So, so you're gonna show us some techniques, or
We could do something.
So the question is, how do we bring how do people bring their awareness up from that place? Because there seems to be a lot of influence out there that's driving us into that fear response, right?
yeah,
We really have to express the emotion. So if it's anger, a good scream, and it's very hard to scream if you live in an apartment or with other people. So what we do is we'll get in a car, and you're pretty shielded. You can scream pretty loud in there, or
with windows up.
yeah, or intonations. You can just the vowels, you can go ah, and you just vibrate your body in these different syllables and chakras, and that just creates a movement in each of them that starts to release. But we have other practices too that get even deeper.
Okay.
Yeah, those are kind of simple ones. There's lots of simple ones, and then I sometimes use those the tone when I go through chakra, when I start off the meditation. One kind of meditation I go through like a ooh, right, and then is the heart chakra tone, and then I can feel the vibration, right, and it's just just you saying it, and everybody can feel it, right, and then if it's louder, you can feel more, of course, but that's just magically it is doing activating, and then if you want balance, you can balance it too, right? So,
Yeah, you do that a lot when you're prepping for a reading.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Mhm. That's quick one and simple, right? So yeah, I always use that.
But I think even before that, there's an essential element, and that's just an awareness, right? I think people are aware at this point, after having lived through this health crisis for a while, that there is something not right, right? That if we're always on edge all the time, it's leading to problems, right? It's leading to relationship problems. It's leading to our own health problems. It's not providing solutions, right? It's simply like a red alert button's going all the time, and you can't sustain that. Nobody can, right? So sure, red alert has its purpose to keep you on, get you ready for action. But if the action never stops, then it doesn't work anymore, and you just start to grind down. So I think people are aware at this point that we need something different. We need to be able to work with this in a practical way that is more healthy, more long-term, more community oriented in some sense, that because if we're cut off from everybody all the time, where is that going to lead us, right? It's a little bit like being in a prison. So that doesn't lead to solutions, because we as humans, we create solutions by connecting with other people, right? We need that awareness. And if we're slipping into that state, to be aware of our anxiety, to be aware of our shock and our trauma, just to at least give it that recognition, then we can start to look beyond that and start to think about doing something different and bringing our energy up. So yeah, so I love that. I love the intonation as a way of bringing up. What do you guys think? Is that do you feel like that's enough, or is there
like
more to take into
yeah,
consideration there to move past that?
Releasing emotion. I think it's like one of the first thing you can do, right? If you are trying to do something and then your emotion is still there, not being released, and then it stays and it gets pushed in farther, deeper too, right? So you want to be careful. Sometimes doing exercise and then
Exercise
being in the
good.
heart,
Yeah.
right? And then doing meditation, those are great, but sometimes you want to face your emotion, and is it still there? Am I keeping it down low so I don't feel it? Those kind of things you want to check once in a while. And then if it's there, yeah, let's release it, right?
Yeah, I guess we have to be honest with ourselves, right?
Yeah, you don't want to fool yourself.
Yeah, you can't you can't bury that feeling, that fear, and anger can be part of it too, right? Anger is just one of the masks that fear wears, right? If anger, frustration, all those kind of things, sadness, depression, any of that kind of stuff, anxiety, all of those things are all different masks of fear, right? And so if we're being really honest with ourselves, we've got to recognize the connection between those emotions and the root cause, which is the fear. And then maybe there's something stoking that fear. So what is it? Is it us? Is it outside?
Yeah.
You got to deal with those sources of it too, right?
One exercise I share with the clients sometimes when they have fear or anger. This is a good one. You take a pen and paper and you write anything and everything that you are frustrated, you're worried, or you're angry. You are angry at this person or this person, this person. You write down everything. Of course, you're doing it all by yourself. This is your sacred place, right? You don't want to do it with some other one. This is just for you, and you don't have to share. So you can be dead honest and just keep writing, like automatic writing. You just, and then you don't want to think about, oh, I shouldn't write this. Oh, I shouldn't. have this kind of feeling, negative feeling toward people, no, forget that, and you're just gonna write everything, whatever, right? Just keep writing till you can't write anymore, and then you burn that paper, right? And that's physically you are letting out, and you are processing it, right? And that's lots of people done that, and they said, oh, that felt good, right? And sometimes like the gratitude came out after that. Like I was surprised. I was so mad at him, but that I start to feel grateful for him. Like, oh my God, that's, yeah. So those, they're doing something very powerful, right? And then it's really releasing it, and it's very simple. You don't need anything, any experience. You just write and burn it, and that's a really good way to release. And then you are releasing your negative energy, and all other exercise you do will become even more powerful, right? Because you're not getting held back from emotion. Yeah. So
yeah. There's a couple of things here, I think. First of all, I want to touch on something you mentioned, Paul. You know, complex problems require complex solutions. And in my experience, when you're dealing with problems that deal with the collective, you're going to have a much higher chance of being able to come up with a solution for the collective if you have a group of people together. Why? Because a single brain, a single mind is only capable of holding so much of that, of whatever perspective is that's, you know, that's creating the problem. When you bring a group of people together, you have a broader perspective. So I have a background in as a creative director, and this is something that I've noticed a lot in doing that kind of work, is that when people come together with a common goal, in this case is coming up with a concept or an idea for a project, and they check their egos aside, and they start to really put effort into truly like solving that problem, something beautiful happens. There is a point where it's very palpable. You always feel this. And it's very similar to music, when you have a group of live musicians kind of jamming out, and at first it's kind of like, you know, noisy, but all of a sudden there is harmony and everybody syncs up. So the same thing happens with creativity. And now all of a sudden you start to think and come up with ideas that you probably wouldn't be able to do as an individual. So you start to think as a bigger individual. This is, I believe, because of the law of entrainment, that nervous systems tend to entrain with one another. And when they come together with that common goal, all of a sudden, boom, you have a much, much more powerful perspective than you would as an individual. So this is one reason why it's important to have these types of discussions right now with the issues that we're dealing with, because they're not easy. And there's many perspectives to consider.
Yeah, and that right there, right there, if we're coming together, and we're finding interesting ways to do that these days, creative ways to come together. This is one of them, just being online, right, and doing a Zoom call. But coming together, you've got to be able to deal with that internal fear, just being on overdrive. You got to be able to work with your own stuff, right? You got to get through your own, you know, baggage a little bit in order to be able to connect with other people. That's what you're saying, bringing up your energy to your heart center, right? And that allows you to then be able to be receptive to other people, and the thing that we're dealing with right now, that is a starting place, right? That's just where you begin. And then there's the point of needing to accommodate all these different conflicting ideas about what the hell is going on in the world, right? For example, how people and their ways of dealing with it, right? There's so many different explanations that I've heard for what's going on, that it gets a little bit out there, and people get very attached to their explanation, right? They zero in on one or another online personalities or information sources, whether they're mainstream or not, and they become very attached to those. And so how do we work together in that environment?
Well, we do have a comment from somebody on the chat, and Natalie Wilson says, it might not necessarily be about not being honest with the self. And she brings up a good point. As we all have blind spots, we are not aware of those blind spots. It takes someone else to identify. And so I think this is where and she says it here, we have to be willing to listen, but we do have to be humble enough to be called out. And, you know, I get called out a lot, and I'm always working on myself. So I think you get used to it, and you just start to like, so you throw something out there and somebody's like, well, you're not seeing this. And so you take it back in and you feel that, and you say, well, you know, I could have some stuff that I need to process there.
I think the perfect analogy there is what I brought up a little while ago is creative brainstorming. Okay, if there's a group of people around a table trying to come up with an idea, it doesn't benefit anybody if one person says, well, you know, I came up with this idea, and everyone's like poo-pooing it, and they hold on to it. It's like, no, but this, and then they try to convince the group that that's the right one. It's probably not going to be the best solution. So you need to be humble about it, and you need to accept, you know, constructive criticism, and be okay with other people not agreeing with your ideas, and to be able to play this ping pong, you know, and bounce this idea back and forth. And little by little, we'll start to carve out this almost like this holographic thought form that didn't exist before, that was only possible because a group got together and set their ego aside.
Yeah, setting the ego aside, like you guys are saying, right? Exactly. Having the internal fortitude to be able to either A, have your idea or contribution shot down for some reason, right? Or B, work with somebody who is aggressively pushing theirs, right? And you know, whether that person is correct or not, right? There's that huge egoic tendency to want to be right, and I see that really on steroids these days, because people are looking for alternative explanations for what's going on, and like I said, they go down one track or another, and they tend to believe it's this and not that, and not that, and not that, and not that, and they get really zeroed in on one thing. So how do we move, like you guys are saying, you're absolutely right, but how is it that you work with somebody when they are really pushing their agenda? How do you do that?
Sometimes pushing their agenda.
Well, I mean, that is a possibility if we don't work with them, but we do need to come together, right? We're being very siloed right now and isolated, and that's a huge problem.
It's an option, right? Don't work with them
yes,
if it's
it
possible.
is always an option.
But if you are going to work with them, that's another option. And then what you can do, there's a different pathway you can do. Yeah.
I mean, my tendency is to focus very heavily on my own shit, right? Just to work, to develop myself, and I try to bring my best self to the group, and I'm always willing to up my game the next time, right? I see that as my best contribution, right? Rather than being the guy with the genius idea how to fix things, I try to go that way instead, right? But I have trouble with sometimes, you know, navigating through relationships where people have these strong opinions about how things work, and they're not really interested in working with other people or hearing about alternatives. It's
So that's key right there, Paul. And I think that you know, just to Tommy's point, sometimes we don't want to work with people. Why? Because we need to understand where they're coming from.
Mhm.
If we recognize that they're coming to the conversation to prove themselves right, it's probably not worth our energy. It's not worth, you know, to go butt heads with them. We should probably reserve that energy with, you know, for people that actually do have that capacity. A lot of folks really just don't have that capacity. Again, we're talking about, when we're talking about fear states, we're talking about a very contracted state. And what I'm personally seeing in the world is a bunch of people that, you know, want to be right. So, and their righteousness is to such a degree that they dehumanize other people, and they are willing to watch another human being suffer and die to prove their point. And that's a very dark place.
At the extreme, yeah. I have seen some very negative things out there. Yeah.
So Natalie here is sharing with us that, you know, finding a group of people or a team that are all holistically trying to benefit all. She's basically saying here that this is not going to be like a place where there would be hostile pushing agendas in those kind of groups. If you were really to pull a group together with people that were focused on a mission and were open to it. So yeah, finding those people, and but also it's good to have diverse visions whenever we're discussing.
Absolutely. So, but if she's saying that, you know, there's a group of people getting together with a common goal, then I think there's two elements that need to be present. First of all, identifying what the problem is. And oftentimes that's acknowledging that some of our fears might be shared. When we're talking about what's happening in the world, you know, I think that most of our fears revolve around being sick or dying. And it manifests in different ways around different topics, but at the end of the day, we're all scared of being sick and dying. So that gives us a commonality and a starting point that lets us start to, you know, bounce ideas back and forth. How can we come to an agreement or find a solution so that we don't feel that way? I think that's number one. And the other element that I think needs to be present is approaching the conversation from a place of safety. If you bring in that state of contraction and that survival fear into the conversation, chances are you're probably not going to get far. And it's going to be, again, trying to prove your point against the other person's point. But if you approach it from a place of safety and knowing I'm a whole being and my body feels safe, and regardless of the outcome of this conversation, I am in a sovereign being in integrity, connected with the earth, and all is well. And that might mean, and I mean, that might mean even getting to a point where we come to a place of acceptance about our own death. And that's not an easy place to be, right? But the ultimate fear is death. So can we approach it knowing that we're willing to work through things because we're not contracted about that horrible thing happening? When we have those two elements, I think that creates a beautiful opening and a beautiful space for us to truly connect heart to heart, to truly connect as brothers and sisters and see our commonalities.
And the cool thing is when you combine this open-minded energy, the humble energy, and a group of people that are very, very different, then there's always a solution that nobody thought of, but you all of a sudden you pull together something more beautiful than your own mind could have come up with. Mm-hmm. And that's all I'm about, is like, how can we create like allow room for miracles to come in, because obviously it's bigger than me, it's bigger than you. So we need something bigger. Like what is the saying? You can't solve problems from the level at which they were created.
Yeah, level of the mindset, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting quote, actually. So that's Albert Einstein, right? Very famous quote. We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's like the problem gets created when we're all in that fear mode, and we're not thinking right, and we just react, and everything's about protection, and it's all about hoarding and buying guns and waiting for the zombie apocalypse, right? That is an understandable knee-jerk reaction, but we're past that now. We need solutions. We need long-term solutions, and so we're like, I love what you guys are saying, and bringing that mindset up into the heart, so you're being able to connect with others, and bring forward your compassion, right, and your understanding, your open-mindedness, and I would also say, there's an element of faith that has to come into this, right? It's, at some point, there's you have to have faith that when you do your best, make decisions, and based on the best information that you have, that you're going to be okay the next moment, right?
That's like you're in your heart,
Mhm.
right? Coming out of fear. When you have fear, you can't have faith. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't exist both, right?
Yeah.
So if once you let go of fear, then faith comes in, and then when you're in heart chakra, you are allowing faith to bring out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
There is another famous quote that we've all heard that I think applies to exactly what we're talking about. And this one is by MLK. Returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So this isn't a matter of morality. This is a matter of the true energetics and processing of information. It's either low or it's up here and in this expansive state. So it's a very important.
So that quote applies to just individual, and then also like inside, right? You're hating yourself and you're frustrated, mad. That's internal thing, but also outside with outside world too, right? So yeah, first we can work on ourselves, like bringing the energy and what was the word? Consciousness, right? And then be aware, and you're as much as you can be in your heart, and then you connect to people, and then when you're connecting people, you can tell, okay, this person is in fear and just wants to control. That's not going to work. I don't want to work with this person. This person has a little bit fear, but he's aware and he's working through his stuff, so it's worth trying. Or this person is pretty good in his heart, and I like the energy, I want to work with him, kind of thing, right? And then you can choose that. That's the healthy decision making too, right? You can choose a healthy relationship to build a community, or whatever level you want to do. But I think always starting with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Natalie makes another point, and she's right on with this. We all know this very well. She says, if we can acknowledge there is a time for everything, love, hate, health, sickness, living, dying, we will be better able to embrace all the different variations of experiencing existence. And yeah, I think she's perfectly right on, because we are like having all these waves of experiences come up for us, and we can't really just like wrangle them and say, no, I'm having this experience. No, we have to actually like go through each of these waves, and obviously it's really good to finish processing the waves, change the way our life is working based on these feelings, and then allow them to go, and then on to
Yeah.
It's necessary, I think. So yes, absolutely. I hope I haven't come across as, saying that we should repress these feelings. So I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we need to find ways to safely express these feelings and move them out of our nervous system before we come to a place where we can actually sit down and try to understand another person. So there is a time and a place. The time for being in a fear state is not when you're actually communicating with another person. Hatred most definitely is not. That's not the time. So finding ways to process those emotions, finding ways to coming to a place of safety within the body, I think is a must before we can actually engage.
Should we do a few exercises to move emotions out of the body?
Well, yeah, we can. And before, I mean, you can show us, Desiree, some simple ways of, getting, I mean, that also, why would you want to use your body to move emotions?
Well, what's interesting about the body is that it's not everything you see is not really here. There's actually more going on. So we've got the physical body, and I don't know, a lot of people have heard this, but we store trauma in the body. A lot of people have said that, but there's actually another field on top of the body, which is like the emotional layer of the body. So with strong emotions, it starts to collect all over the body. And then on top of that, like even further out, we have like the thoughts. So we're like, everything we're thinking is like affecting our environment and drawing and pulling different things in and out of our lives. So it's going to be really important that we clear these emotions, and that we even like stand guard to what our minds are thinking, because our minds are literally creating. So
yeah, the way that I see that is we're kind of like we're conduits. We're kind of like batteries, and we're in constant in a constant energetic exchange with the environment. This is how it should be. Things flowing out of us, coming into us. It's just like the symbiotic relationship we have with trees and breathing. That's the way it works. But these contractions, when they happen within the nervous system, makes this energy accumulate, and it starts to build up and build up and build up and manifest in negative ways. So what you're saying is there's ways of moving the body to get that stuff open, to get those channels to open, to energy to flow out.
Yeah, so we can do some.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, what's really fun is that if you just look at a child, like a 3-year-old child, and when they have an emotional outburst, how do they handle it? That's a perfect place to go learn how to move our emotions, because we just learned our whole lives to sit down and shut up and hold on to it. And that's why we get sick. And that's why we blow up at each other. It's because if we had just thrown a temper tantrum, we would have been fine. Or a couple of them. But so something that I would say that we would do is like shaking or like screaming, like I've said already, or
it sounds funny, but she's actually touching on something important. Psychologists really have learned a lot from looking at children's behavior. And sure, a lot of the times they throw tantrums to draw our attention, but we can learn a lot from the way that they use their body to express these strong emotions. And we can also learn a lot by looking at animals, because something that's quite interesting is that animals out in nature, even though they're out there fighting for their survival pretty much on a daily basis, rarely ever hold on to trauma. It's really only domesticated animals that can be traumatized. So why do animals in nature don't do that? Well, it turns out that it's because they have a naturally occurring mechanism for shaking and dislodging traumatic energy when it presents itself.
Shaking their bodies.
So just like this.
Yeah.
You see it. You see it like with let's say ducks fighting in the pond, right? And one of them's aggressive against the other one, and then what they'll do afterwards is they'll just shake their feathers off, right? And then they go right back, and they're just completely serene, maybe a little whack, and they're good. Yeah, exactly, right? So I mean, you're exactly right. So
You try to feel it.
so processing that, releasing that energy real time, like you're saying too, right? That's one of your program exercises.
It doesn't have to be in real time. Unfortunately, it's not always appropriate to do it in real time. You know, if you're,
it's just, I feel silly, and that's helping, right? Just feeling silly, and you forget. I wasn't angry, but even if like I have frustration or anger doing this, right, I start to feel silly. I'm pretty sure I would do feel that way, and then I just, what am I doing, right?
Silly is different from angry, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
so that's already a shift.
I'm already shifting.
Yeah.
And what am I doing here? And why I was angry? That's just, you know, that little thing, and then just.
I'm gonna spaz out at parties now.
Right?
I'm gonna throw that tantrum. I'm gonna be on the floor.
Yeah.
you know,
And if you do that with people, I think it's powerful enough that you can shift other people's energy too, and they can laugh at you. And
well, they do that anyway.
Yeah, they do. But and then if they have some frustration, it could shift to whatever. This guy's just being stupid and funny, and what am I just thinking, and why I have to worry about this little thing, and he's like this, right? I want to be like him, or not, but
this will be an interesting social experiment, Satomi. Do this at a party, and Paul can record you with his phone, and then we'll all see how other people react.
Okay.
At least.
Having a party right now with lots of people.
Yeah.
But
we'll do an online party or something. I don't know.
Online party. Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Fun. Don't tell anyone. Watching, don't tell anyone.
That's funny. No, it actually doesn't have to be done in the moment, but it does have to be done at some point. Animals do this, as I was saying, particularly after a freeze response. So grazing animals, right before they're going to get eaten by that tiger, if they don't get eaten, you know, they go into a freeze response, and they might stay there for a couple minutes, but eventually they'll start by taking deep belly breaths, and it's an indication of the importance of breathing to engage our body and our nervous system. And then after that, they shake it off. And like you said, a few minutes later, they'll be back to grazing like nothing ever happened. Like, you know, they just got eaten, almost got eaten, but nothing happened. So, and with us, it's the same. At some point when we find time to have privacy, or we feel safe enough, it does suit us to express energy. And survivors of traumatic events can sometimes hold on to this stored energy for many years. But this is where the somatic practices come in, and the importance of really using the body to get stuff out. It only goes so far to be able to speak about experiences like that with another person.
So what's a technique or a quick technique to release that energy?
You were saying, like Alex, you were just talking about breathing, like an animal start to have a deep breath, right? When after the attack, and then the breathing technique, it releases just for the short moment. You can release some energy too, right? And anger, frustration, just deep breathing. We did tactic breathing. That's
Practical breathing.
Yeah, tactical breathing.
Yeah, I mean, we could go deep on this topic. I'm afraid we don't have enough time,
Mhm.
but you're right, Satomi. Breathing can be profound, and I will quickly touch upon a couple of ones since we only have a few minutes. But the one that you mentioned, tactical breathing, is very, very powerful. I actually do have some professional tactical experience, and it's something that comes in very handy when you're under very high stress situations that require you to continue to be physical. Some of the breathing practices, really, you need to be sitting down in a living room, whatever. If you are in a situation where you have a gun in your hand and you have to actually like be protecting some people and moving through some sketchy situations, you need to be able to move, to be physical, to keep your mind engaged, and at the same time control your nervous system so that it doesn't go out of control. So it's very simple. It's also called box breathing. So this might be an easier way to remember it because it's in the shape of a box. You basically just take the deepest breath you can, engage in your entire abdomen, not just shallow breaths, but really bringing in enough air to really feel that diaphragm lowering and having your entire abdomen expand. So you take a really deep breath for a count of 4, and then you hold it for a count of 4, and then you exhale for a count of 4, and then you hold it again for a count of 4. So inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. And you can keep this going for as long as you need to keep your nervous system regulated. This is a very helpful tactic to do when you're in situations where you can't really go act crazy and throw a temper tantrum. If you're getting chewed out by your boss in a conference room or whatever, obviously you can't do that, but engaging with this breathing pattern, incredibly powerful. Another one that incorporates a little bit of the intonation, if you choose for it to, is physiological sighs. So this has been very, very much studied in clinical settings, and it's a natural reaction that the body has as a way to calm down. We actually do this subconsciously, and we even do this in our sleep, which involves taking, but this is a really cool thing, even though the body is wired to do this subconsciously or, through the autonomous nervous system, if we engage with this breathing pattern consciously, it has the same results because it's activating the same neurons in the brain. So it involves taking also a very, very deep breath, the deepest breath that you can. And once you think that that your lungs are already full of air, you take another breath. So it's 2. And then a little short breath, and then a long exhale. If you want to, you can actually sigh as you exhale. You can grunt, you can intone as you exhale. But yeah, the key is those 2 really deep breaths. The second breath actually opens up all the little sacs in our lungs to be able to take in more oxygen. So it's
And it even made me yawn. I was like, hey, you have to take a nap now.
So like those techniques, like breathing techniques and other techniques, you're talking about in a really dangerous situation, but that helps, going back to the topic, decision making. Like if you are in fear, doesn't matter it's big or small. If you're in a fear state, you are not making healthy decisions. So just taking few breath, right, and then makes you grounded and brings the awareness to your heart, right, and then you can make different decisions than just a few seconds ago, right? It can take just a few seconds, and I've done that, talking. I need to talk to Paul, right? Because he's angry or something. And then if I'm like this, that's not gonna work, right? So I just okay, I'm ready, right? Kind of thing. I know everybody does it at some degree, right? But sometimes you're not aware you're doing it, but consciously doing it and practicing it, and you get better, and then you're in balance and centered, heart centered, right? And so you can make a good decision as much as you can and as many times as you can, like out of 35,000 a day, right? So yeah,
because that's how many they've already
decision
shown
you
that
make.
people make. They make 35,000 decisions a day, and so you probably want to make some good ones.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, some good ones.
Yeah.
Not always happen that way, but as much as we can, we want to take a breath and focus on am I being in heart or am I being in fear, right? Self-check, right? And then if you have somebody that trust that you can trust to tell us that actually you're in fear mode right now, kind of thing, and really, right? And then it can help too.
Well, if you're like this, you're definitely in fear mode, right? Like they were saying, those masks of fear. If you're angry, you're bringing your voice up and you're being aggressive in the conversation, then that's fear. It's every time. So maybe we'll wrap it up here, but I do want to say before we go, I'll just throw this out there, and maybe we'll enlarge on this on an upcoming episode. But what I have found is that first of all, being aware of where when you're in fear, but then when you're trying to make decisions, if you're trying to decide between A or B, if you feel where it's coming from, you really look at it hard, and you really be honest with yourself. What's driving me towards decision A, right? Option A. Is it if it's fear? If I'm going with option A because I'm afraid of something, my rule, and it's never failed me ever since I started doing this, is if it's based on if option A is if the reason why I want to go there is because of fear, I make a different choice.
Like a fear, it could be because you're angry. That's fear, right? You're frustrated, right? Those ones. That's not just I'm afraid of, right? That's fear can be in a different shape.
This doesn't apply for when you're afraid, you're gonna get run over by the car if you don't get out of the crosswalk fast. Doesn't apply that. But how often does that happen? I'm talking about all the other times that we're trying to make decisions in our lives. If the option A is based on fear, make a different choice. Look at option B. Maybe that one is too. Then think about other options. There will be an option that isn't based on fear for you to take, and that's the one to go with. Based on, because it's only going to be based on either fear or love, right? Ultimately, underneath all those emotions, it's going to be either fear or love. It can't be both. So being honest with yourself and then making choices. So sometimes those are hard because you can be really driven towards that fear decision. Be voices, very strong voices saying this is really important to do this.
Yeah, you don't want to die. You don't want to die.
Or this guy's a real jerk, right?
Yeah, that's the big fear.
It's in my face. So but anyway, so
so that was great. And we got some questions and answered. Thank you so much, Natalie, for sharing your questions. That's great.
And we also had another visitor, Kayla Bosch, said, "Hey all."
Oh, hi.
Hey,
Thank
Kayla.
you for watching. Great. So if we don't have any more questions or other stuff, we can wrap it up, and we'll see you next week. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. It was great. Yeah. Thank you. See you next week.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you.
Love you.